Hello, it's Josh here. Hopefully you can hear me and possibly see me in the bottom right hand corner. I thought I would record a video looking at Kevin Stott. It's hot, isn't it? Oh, I'm melting here. I'm recording this on Monday evening, actually, when it's a tad bit cooler. Yeah, I won't try and, well, I'll try and keep it short, succinct to a point, I suppose. The aim of this isn't necessarily to just talk through some of the angles, really. Well, that isn't the point, actually. It's more to show you how I think about these kind of things and go about researching everything within the report, and hopefully talk through what's going through my head, I suppose, with the purpose, for those of you who like researching your own angles or systems or ideas, with the purpose that it may give you some further ideas of your own in terms of how you can approach things, and whether or not my own approach is any kind of any use to you moving forward. And even if you have no ambition or ideas of building your own systems or doing your own research such as this, hopefully some of the things I talk about may be of interest and of use in your own punting. As always, I'm kind of attacking it live, so to speak. I haven't practiced anything or looked at anything. It's all in my head, and I will try to be triggered by either the report in front or by kind of the different things I look at when I switch over to the different bits of software, with a main focus kind of on HorseRaceBase. Hopefully the camera's not too dark. I'm just looking down, but anyway, seeing me obviously isn't important. Hearing me is the main thing. So yeah, I tried to turn on a light then, but that looked a bit odd. What am I going to do first? The first thing to say is, with any idea, research, or something you want to look at, you kind of need some logic to a point, I suppose. But yeah, I said any idea. I suppose having an idea is useful, rather than just going, I'm going to attack some research to try and find something. It could be something you've spotted watching the racing, could be something they've talked about on TV, might be something you just want to have a look at. Whatever it is, it's good to have an idea. Now, I've kind of included this foundation set of data and pointers, and I'll show you how I found those. That some of the thinking behind that is possibly why the trainer profiles in section 2 of the Daily Post for the flat have been doing okay. Well, they've been doing quite well, really, for kind of a systematic approach like that. I didn't expect them to work kind of backing them blind necessarily, but they are so far. And part of that was the picking of the trainers and kind of the underpinning factors and foundation of data. You kind of want a solid foundation whenever you're especially looking at jockeys and various different things. If I'd have done what I'm about to do and Kevin's foundation data had been rubbish, I probably wouldn't have bothered looking at them, in truth. The point here is that in the last year, he is probably riding the best he has. He's clearly getting better. Obviously, he's ridden his first group winner this season, which would be some indication of that. He's obviously getting better as a jockey. He's getting more established in the north as time goes on, and the foundation is that he's a very good rider, and backing all of his rides blind in the last year has clearly been profitable. There will be some big price winners in that figure, but to be kind of 19% above market expectations is a kind of a crude measure to a point, but an indication of value. If that was kind of 1 or lower, that would indicate the market is over betting, which is what happens with, for example, Ryan Moore, which is maybe no shock, but his horses get sent off a lot shorter than they should be, probably for obvious reasons, especially over time. And that may happen with him, with Kevin, in time as well. But yeah, you want that kind of foundation to be solid from which you can dig from, knowing that yeah, just all of his rides without doing any further digging. The stats are decent. The impact value, he has impact as a jockey, riding kind of winners 1.72 kind of more times than the average jockey. And there's links there kind of explaining those metrics in an article Matt did on Geegeez, and he's probably better at explaining such things than myself and has more of a head for that kind of data side. So you kind of have that foundation, and those, well, to kind of show you how to get that, I suppose, for any of you watching this who are Geegeez Gold users, or you may want to be, take a trial for £1. There is system building software in here. I won't lie, if system building is your thing, I mean, HorseRaceBase is still my thing for that, but I suspect over time Matt will make this piece of kit pretty comparable, but it does some things which HorseRaceBase doesn't do. But HorseRaceBase's costs have gone up, I think, which probably makes it unviable to have both, if I'm being totally blunt. But I'm rambling, but that's the nature of these videos. I told you I hadn't practiced. You'll just get what comes into my head, and it may or may not be useful, but it will be transparent and upfront. So yeah, I want to look in the last year. The way in with Kevin Stott in terms of an idea was, obviously there's lots of chat in the media. That isn't necessarily a good thing from a punting perspective, obviously. But yeah, he's kind of crept into the top 10, hasn't he, of jockeys, I think, for winners on the flat so far, which is obviously decent. Like I said, he had that first group winner. So I just wanted to look at the last year for this kind of foundation data. Now, of course, you could look back 2, you could look back 5, but jockeys are obviously very dependent on the people they're riding for and the horses they're riding. Obviously, a big chunk of their skill and ability comes into it, but if you're only riding in class 6s, you're probably only going to ever do so well. So that depends obviously on their links and etc. and various different things. So I've just turned some light on, it was getting a bit dark. So yeah, so you look in the last year, so I'm within Geegeez query tool, and having said that I'll keep this as succinct as possible, I will, but it's definitely going to be at least 20 minutes, isn't it? So, you know, pause, make a cup of tea, trying to get distracted by something else. So yeah, if we look at the last year, you can do various different things. I'm going to dive straight into Kevin Stott actually, and you can tick all these different boxes and just type. I think it's the last ones. If I then generate report, you will see all of his rides for the last year, as you can see there. You can, I suppose what I did with that, so this is going to be all weather and flat, but obviously you can pick different bits and pieces in this, but my purpose isn't necessarily to show off this bit of kit. Actually, those stats should look the same, and they do. Before I just dive into kind of the foundation stuff and where he sits within the wider jockey pool, what else I wanted to look at? Yeah, the pace stats were something I'll bring to life, which I mentioned in the report. That's where this bit of kit is kind of decent. I can break down all of his runs there, as you can see, by the different pace score. So 1 is held up, 2 is kind of a mid-division, 3 is more prominent, and 4 is leading. Now, of course, you only know a horse has done that based on their historical runs, and data like this is only produced after the horse has done it. Our job, obviously, is to try and predict where a horse is going to be within a race. And obviously Geegeez has excellent pace tools. There's free ones around at the races. Has pace maps, I believe, in their race cards, which aren't too shabby. Nothing like Geegeez, of course, but as a free resource goes, there's plenty there. And yeah, their pace maps are decent. I think, I'd like to think it's not one of the underbet things or factors, but if you're placing a bet on a horse and you have no idea what position it's going to be in the race, how the race, you think the race may be won, how that will affect your horse, you shouldn't be betting, in my view. It's not too difficult because of the kind of free resources and resources that are around, but you ideally will have some rough idea of where your horse, or where you would think the horse is going to be within the race. I won't look at the overall stats, but as per kind of some research for handicap chasers and videos I did along similar lines a few months ago, the place to be with them in particular is prominent and leading, but that's generally the case for handicaps on a lot of codes, actually, with some obvious exceptions such as straight track sprint handicaps, large fields, strong travellers, the likes of York, particularly Ascot, are compared to be more patiently ridden. And with that said, Kevin Stott is pretty good. I've looked at quite a few jockeys over time and pace profiles with different bits, and I can't remember seeing something like this. Normally you get a lower win percentage with the hold-up horses, and it gradually rises as they race the horses more prominently. But here he's pretty patient, and you can see 23% above market expectations, decent ROI. Again, you know, this might be down to one odd big price winner, I don't know, so I'm not diving into it, but as an idea that he's very good at riding hold-up types, that's quite useful. This is in all races, of course, and all race types, and will include maidens and other different things. And you can see what he does when he leads, and he's pretty deadly from the front. So certainly, if you have access to pace maps or whatever resources you use for such things, and if you don't incorporate trying to think about pace and race positioning into your betting, that is one thing. If you could do anything else, I would strongly advise pondering before placing, or when looking at a race and thinking about placing a bet. And yeah, it's he obviously has a good clock in his head and can judge pace. That's the main thing to kind of take away from this little bit here. If I untick that box and untick that and just what did I want to do? Code, yeah, I've got those two ticked. This for the last year. So this is all kind of, these are all flat and handicap, flat turf and flat all weather winners in the last year, and you can see kind of impact of 0.99, which it should be, because that's all kind of horses and all races, and that should be around 1. And if I dig by jockey, we can start to see, if I tick this box here and then generate a report, that will kind of divide all of this by the jockeys. Now, before I do that, I want number of runs to be 150 plus. So that basically is 150 rides or more, just so we're kind of looking at those that obviously have enough experience and whose data may not be kind of swayed by the odd winners or the odd kind of big price winner from even smaller samples. Now, of course, when you're looking at this kind of data, your samples can only ever be so big. That's why kind of logic and foundation work like this can be more important. If we look at kind of win percentage, as I indicated, so you can sort it by low to high. Here's high. I mean, you can see Frankie is kind of a league on his own in terms of impact value. Actually, I'll get onto that in a moment. Obviously, lots of his are overbet and you can't back them blind. But you can see Kevin Stott down here within this list. Donna O'Brien obviously doesn't ride anymore, so I could, well, he's sat there, but first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, so he's actually technically 8th in the list in terms of win percentage. And you can see there with the different things that I've discussed within the report, and actually the profit, I suspect that is going to be the odd monster, isn't it, in terms of odds and why he's profitable to SP. But you can kind of sort out by various different things. Actual versus expected has some indication of value and that the market hasn't cottoned on, and to have a kind of positive score from all rides in a period is difficult. I mean, there's not many of them. You go down to Kurt, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20. Yeah, so there's only kind of 22 or so from all of their rides in the last year, all race types, everything, who are operating above market expectations, which is some kind of guide that their horses are sent off at a bigger price than they should be, and that's obviously the edge, and that's the value, and the market hasn't quite caught up to them, but they will in time. So they're all positive foundations, and he sits well within the kind of jockey body as a whole for these different parameters. So that's the kind of foundation thinking, I suppose. We've had a weigh-in with Kevin Stott, given the talk and the winners he's been riding and the big race winners, creeping into the top 10 in the jockey table. And then you're kind of wanting some evidence to kind of underpin the idea of having a further look. And sorting by impact value, again, you can see him there. And he's, comfortably, well, again, not very far down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's kind of 8th again because Donica isn't riding, for kind of impact value, which I think, I'm not 100% sure how it's calculated for this jockey one. It's partly related to strike rate compared to the overall body of jockeys average, which is around 10%. But I think there may be some other bits and pieces in it. I could be talking complete nonsense. Possibly it's calculated also using field size and percentage strike rate within different field sizes. I'm not sure where I read that, somewhere. That could be complete nonsense. In a sense, you can have a rough idea on what these different metrics and figures mean, and like I said, there's a link in the report. But you don't need to know exactly how they're kind of how they're created, but you need to know, I suppose it's good to know what's good and what's bad, and the bigger the figure above 1, the better for both of these, really, and that gives you more confidence moving forwards that both Kevin Stott is having impact and his skill is having impact, and that the market hasn't yet cottoned on and that his horses are being sent off at a bigger price than they should be, and the odds are underestimating actually his chance of success on what he's actually achieving. So that's kind of some of the foundation work you can do. I've shown you a bit of the pace. I could do a video another day on kind of various other bits of the Geegeez query tool. They're kind of some of the main things I look at. I've used HorseRaceBase, which I'm going to jump over to now, for my research for ages. And what I want to have a look at is System Builder. We're in the V4 System Builder. So I'm just checking the heat on my laptop. It's getting quite warm. Hopefully it doesn't combust. So yes, I'm in HorseRaceBase, and what do I want to look at here? So obviously I'm going to add the jockey. This is the V4 System Building. If you like system building, various different other things, obviously I'm a big fan of this piece of kit. You can kind of add any number of different factors. Like I said, this is kind of why it's important to a point to have some kind of idea, or some kind of idea of what you want to do. Then you can add different factors, but I'm just going to add jockey, and you can go all the way down and add and do whatever. You could do a kind of control find or control F, which I've done there, just to save me looking around forever. So that's him. Now you'll notice I said at the start of 2016, that's when he dropped his claim. With any kind of angle when looking at, trainers for kind of general top-down research, I would tend to go back the kind of last 3 to 5 years. Obviously so much can change in racing, particularly trainers, any number of factors, facilities, patronage, if their owners change, if bigger owners come in, owners leave, relationships with certain jockeys, if jockeys retire, staff changes, facility changes, change of yard, oilseed rape being planted a couple miles away and making your horses ill for a couple of years, which has happened with a few trainers. You name it, any number of different things can affect trainer stats. So going back further than 5 years at times is arguably questionable, bar possibly big race records that they've targeted for years, possibly. That may be one exception, but having an idea with a jockey of what point to pinpoint for research is no bad thing. If I look down, so you can break down. So that's my starter set of data is Kevin Stott. I can break down by any number of factors, as you can see in front of you. I'm just going to break down by a year for now, and I'm taking out 20 minutes already, but well, this may get limited viewing. Hopefully you find it of some interest. So you can see yeah, I mean, 2016, I know because I've researched it. I've checked when he dropped his claim, which was 2016, and that's when he moved back up north. So he's obviously riding for different trainers, more for Kevin Ryan. He's actually more experienced, etc. So going back to the start of 2016 makes sense. I think he had 6 rides at the beginning of 2016, so I can break down by claim. Oh no, 33. Sorry, with £3. So I did the research with £0. So that's obviously when he became kind of professional. So we're not looking at his rides with a claim on anyway. And from here, that's your kind of start the set of data, and you can kind of dig. I've got Betfair SP actual versus expected. You can see the profit here to Betfair SP, and he's had some big price winners. Now, if I break down by odds, you can kind of have a look and hopefully see the odds of various different horses. It had a 66 to 1 winner, a couple of 23s, although in fairness, a lot of these, those send off 20 to 1 plus, and I'm doing this kind of like, lost 101 points to SP. I always like to check with any angle to kind of look at the odds, just to check there's nothing monstrous, completely kind of, kind of swaying the results and making them problematic, because with any kind of research like this or set of data, you can find 1 or 2 horses can suddenly make any angle look brilliant, either because of the price they won at, or because an angle might have multiple winners of the same horse. So that's something always to check, because we're never going to be dealing with massive amounts of data. Quite deliberately, we never can, because jockeys and trainers, they're never going to be big enough to be statistically significant technically, which is why logic and how you think about it is even more important. So yeah, I like to look at kind of 18, 16 to 1, 10 to 1 and down, just to get an idea, to get a feel for how they've been doing. And you can see there, all horses sent off 18 to 1 or shorter in the period since the start of 2016. Now, yeah, that's kind of across different codes, and you can break down and look through different bits. I like looking at handicaps for many reasons, and sorry, I just paused then and had a look, so I wanted these stats to match up what's in the report. Yeah, so let me just remove that odds cap for a minute. So yeah, I've gone through the foundation stats, and what you kind of then can then do is, I mean, I like looking at handicaps for various, it's kind of bread and butter and part of the staple diet of my blog and the content. Mainly that's because a lot of non-handicaps, when you're talking maidens, novices, group and listed races, very much depend more on the quality of the animal than the quality of the horse, more so than handicaps, obviously, because that's handicapping. The idea in an ideal world is every horse is weighted to cross the line at the same time. Thankfully, no, that doesn't happen, because there are so many factors in the game that influence performance. But more so with non-handicaps, you're talking about class and their specialisms in themselves, maidens and novices, especially with breeding and times, connections, all sorts, and that's a ripe area for study if that's your thing. It isn't necessarily my thing. I like handicaps for various reasons. I like analysing them, etc. And as you know, a big part of my drive now is to kind of create content which is useful for us all, including myself, to use as a starting point, as a way in for kind of further analysis and tipping purposes, outside of trying to find some angles that work systematically. So we've got handicaps now. Very important. Logic is crucial. Any angle, anything you dig to question, does that make sense? What's the purpose of that idea? Which is important for using as a springboard and foundation moving forwards, to have more confidence that your angle and approach may repeat. So without logic, you may be struggling. And also that to avoid backfitting, and the best thing to talk about backfitting is when you just break down by loads of different angles and you just kind of take a load of different ingredients and push them together to create a system. It's very likely that system will not work. moving forwards, and the best way one of the things to demonstrate that is class, and with Kevin Stott in particular. So you can see his class performance here. Now, obviously, classes 2 and 3 become more competitive. So remember, we're looking at all handicaps across all weather and flat turf since the start of 2016. We've got no age restrictions or anything at the moment. That's simply all handicaps. That would include nurseries. And you can, by looking at race class, you can see his performance in race class. Now, backfitting would be if I looked at this and go, we're going to create a system where I just select class 4 and I just select class 6. Right? There is no logic that I can think of, but if you're watching this and you think of some, by all means tell me why you would exclude class 5. No logic why you'd exclude class 5. I cannot think in my head why he should perform worse at class 5 than he would at class 6 or class 4. So excluding class 5 out of kind of a group of 3 like that would be backfitting. And if you look at the place percentage, that's the same as class 3. Class 2 is different, arguably, because of the competitive nature. That will include heritage handicaps. A lot of them can be bigger fields, possibly not. Arguably more competitive. That's some of the logic around class 2s, possibly. But you wouldn't just cherry pick the same way. You wouldn't just go, if we looked at days. So you could look at days of the week if you so wanted. And Saturday's one of interest. And now they make sense for Saturdays given the way the racing calendar is. That's arguably interesting. But you could, the idea of saying, we'll just pick a Thursday because it's profitable, and a Saturday. Why have you picked a Thursday and not a Wednesday, or a Thursday and not a Friday? Just because it's profitable to SP, for example, isn't a good enough reason. Now, there is logic behind some days, and you can look at, certainly that can be linked more to tracks. Obviously, trainers have certain MOs, but that idea when you're looking at factors such as this, of picking, just picking individual factors out based on profit, if there is no logic. So that class 1's probably the best example, because I can't think of logic in my head for why he would ride better and do better to SP on those figures, for example, in class 4 and 6 and not class 5. I can't think of anything. So that would be backfitting, and that's a kind of important element when building systems. So you can do all sorts of things here. So you've got that start the set of kit, start the set of data. I can, if I look at the headgear one, which is always flicked through, and I know one of our readers, George, Lord GB, who may be watching, I don't know, he mentioned headgear, and that's one of those things you would flick through. Now, first time headgear is an idea, obviously. There's different ideas, if you like, kind of digging. I've often thought with first time headgear and certain different parts, you could look at sires as an idea because of the breeding element, and dam size possibly, because you're trying to change behaviour and spark a behaviour by putting headgear on, especially those that restrict vision, cheek pieces, blinkers, visor, and obviously blinkers more extreme. And you can see Kevin Stott's record when riding different headgear. If I just click those 4, so that's kind of riding headgear for all trainers. You can look at, you can then break down that set of data by the number of times the horse has run in said headgear. So you've got this box here, horse run headgear. Now 0 indicates that's their first time headgear. And as you can see, so any horse Stott rides has got first time cheek pieces, blinkers, visor, hood. You can kind of see the data there, which is pretty good. Now, this is where it's important, and I'm recording this live, and I didn't do this way round actually. I looked within Kevin Ryan's and within flat turf handicaps, but that's when then looking at the stats here to get a breakdown by year, you can kind of see from these overall figures that 1 year has kind of swayed the figures a bit and is a standout. And if you go down here, you can kind of then break down by odds and have a look at any different angle to see if they're, any big prices are kind of making up the stats. You can do various different things. If I just break down that, so that's first time here. If I break down by trainers, I tick round to 30 minutes. Where's that time flying? Hopefully useful enough. You can see the kind of Kevin Ryan there, James Bethel. There's a few others there. I suppose you could add into the mix if you want, but obviously the Kevin Ryan one makes sense. So there's various different things you do. Break down again there by race code. You can see there, lose to kind of all weather. You could just do flat turf if you wanted. So there's different ways you can kind of have a look and break down these various different factors, etc., etc. Obviously, there's, like I said, you always want logic. There's logic for why first-time cheek pieces, especially linked to a trainer who knows when to put them on, when to apply them. Some of them use them at home. If kind of booking one of your main jockeys, and also some jockey skill, especially with certain headgear that kind of is meant to light horses up, that ability to get them down to the start, get them breaking from the stalls, revved up but not losing their race early on, and also getting a position, possibly being prominent or trying to make all, etc. So that's something you can do with that. I'll just touch on that other idea I had. Actually, let me just remove that. So you can play around with all these different tools and gadgets. Back to that starter set now. You can use this dig tool. So this is useful for comparing two different factors, if you so wish, within that starter set. So if I do minimum, this is kind of some data which helps set up how the data's, factors which help set up how the data's fired out. The minimum number of qualifiers required for the data to be included. You can set that to whatever you want. I just do one, and I do it by wins, high to low. Now you can think of, well, two or more really, any factors you wanted. So you could click course and distance. So I'm breaking down that starter set by course and distance, and you can see the data there. Beverly, and these are handicaps, remember. Beverly 5 to 5.5 furlongs, 5 from 22, 10 places. This is all trainers, remember. Thirsk 6 to 6.5 furlongs. Ripon, you could pick out some of the ones for fours, but various different things there. You could dig by, oh no, I don't want to save that yet. You could dig by, well, any number of things you wanted to, really, couldn't you? I'm just trying to think. Yeah, we've done course and distance. You could do track and trainer, obviously. That's a kind of top level one, and there's always logic for why that makes sense and why certain trainers would be willing to book certain jockeys. They know either ride their horse well, ride the track well, etc. Again, you can see the various different breakdown there. So that's again something else you can do with the tools. That's a dig element where you can compare different factors. You name it, you can drill down. The final thing I'll touch on, this has probably been going on long enough. I'm not 100% sure if I've said anything useful or not, but hopefully there's something of note for you. That idea that I had, one of the main thrusts within the report, where are we, is obviously, there was those different Kevin Ryan things. That was selecting Kevin Ryan and then digging down into these various different elements. So maybe I could do that. So there's trainer. So you can break down and you can just sort the boxes. So this Kevin Stott, every trainer has ridden for since the start of 2016. That's in handicaps, isn't it? But you can apply and you can see the kind of jump and stand out. Like I said, Stott isn't stable jockey as such, but I mean, you can see from the data yourself how often he rides for Kevin Ryan in terms of handicaps compared to rides for others. So Paul Midgley's an interesting one. And there's another trainer who's done okay for and rides quite a bit for. But yeah, so, that's your starter point, and you can break down by odds if you so want. That's why some of those things I was digging don't match up to what's in the report. But you can look here. You'll know in my daily posts when I put odds brackets, some are kind of a guide, and I say, or best. That's simply to help focus if you're using them as a way in. I use for the systematic stuff, you'll know if you're a long-term suffering reader, this flat season I put a kind of did not qualify. Let me just use that as an example. Where are we? We are, and we just go to today's post. Union was a bit naff, wasn't it? We'll move on from him. But yeah, so these ones, this one was Tim Easterby and Ian Williams angles. The historical research suggested backing 9 or over for that angle long term. You just lose a lot of money. I put the prices on at around 8 a.m. and try and stick consistent every day. Hence the DNQ for did not or does not qualify. From a systematic point of view, of course, you can use as a way in and make your own judgment from your own betting, but as a system, that's why I kind of like to look at odds. And if the negative above X price is too bad, is not very good, and is kind of weighty enough to suggest the market is important. Of course, the market is linked to many different things, including the trainer they ride for, including the owners, and whether they like a bet. Things are a bit different without kind of race courses and racecourse bookmakers and everything else. But if you look at 20 to 1 or bigger for Stott, Kevin Ryan in handicaps, flat turf handicaps since the start of 2016, you can see there that if you're backing at that bigger price, you'll be hoping they get supported and that market support is important. So within this kind of a Kevin Ryan angle, I would kind of be going, 18 to 1 or shorter as an odds cap, because 0 from 43 3 paces, yes, they might have a 22 to 1 win in the next 2 weeks, but over time it would suggest that kind of staying 18 to 1 or shorter may be best. And of course then you can dig down further, but as a top level of stats, 38% above market expectations. But like I said, you can break down then by track, so you can look at trainer. Obviously there's logic for why trainers do well with certain jockeys and book them, especially if they ride out at home a lot, and there's certain indication of behaviour, etc. So many reasons. But again, you can look at their record at certain tracks there. It would be logical and significant, for example, if Kevin Ryan on one day has runners at Hamilton and another meeting that's happening at the same time, and Kevin Stott's at Hamilton, for example, given that record, etc. That's the kind of thing that may be significant, and you can build into any analysis. Where else could the jockey be for that trainer if he's got more than one runner on a day, another track and elsewhere? So like I said, you can dig by track. You can dig by class, which I've shown before, but again, like I said, just excluding class 5, when that place percentage is pretty similar to class 2, there's no logic in my head for that, which is why I haven't said Kevin Ryan Stott in class 2, 3, 4 and 6, because for me that's backfitting and isn't the way to approach systematic building moving forwards, because without logic, class 5 might fire in a load of winners. And obviously stuff, when you're thinking about class, that's to do with the quality of the animal, and of course that can change in various different other bits and pieces. Of course you can look at distance, so you can break down by distance, obviously important one. Again, that's linked to trainers' methods and MOs, modus operandi. They obviously, some are better as shorter and further, etc. I touched on that sweet spot. This is another thing you can do in HorseRaceBase. You can select between 2 points when you've broken down. You can click this apply not rule, so that it will just give me a top level of all the distances outside of 6 furlongs to 8.5. So without me having to go through and count up how all these other ones have done, I can click that, and that's the record that's not between 6 furlongs and 8.5 furlongs. And you can see there how they do and compare. That's kind of the sweet spot. That might be because of how Kevin Ryan trains. It might be linked to Kevin Stott's ability, possibly over those kind of trips, but then I would need to work backwards, remove Kevin Ryan as a trainer and look at his record across all distances. I suspect that's kind of linked to the trainer, the horses he has, how he trains, the races he likes to target. He may well train and buy, he might source horses and buy more for speed than stayers. And obviously different trainers have different likes and dislikes in that regard. So you can do all those different things, and I've done that, and that's the kind of thing. And I spent a big chunk of today, a lot of the day actually, going through all those different factors, trying to think of different logical reasons, and I've kind of fired out within this report what looked most interesting to me, with an idea of trying to think of things that you can't find in the mainstream within the racing post, within other factors. And you may have noticed Sky Sports Racing, Racing UK, they're all starting to use stats a lot more. I'm not liking that. Can they please get on to using sectionals and times and talk about that loads more? They keep flagging trainer stats and this and this, which isn't a problem obviously, but it's becoming more prevalent actually, that idea of looking at trainer behaviour, jockey behaviour, trainer jockey, etc. Hopefully that doesn't affect us too much, but yeah, so you can think of different logical ideas. And to finish, I said that about 10 minutes ago, didn't I? I looked at that impact idea. So the idea of a jockey having an impact on a horse, and having an impact on making them put up an improved run, that obviously makes logical sense. And the idea of them having not sat on the horse very many times, so I can break down by, that's down here, horse, run, jockey, and you can kind of see I was 0 to 2, wasn't it? And then there's a break off, and there's kind of a drop off after that for Kevin Ryan, and there's logical sense there in 0 to 2. Obviously you're picking a number and you are using the data to a point. At what point do you put it? 3 runs, 0 to 4? So you can be led there, but there's logic there for the fewer runs, the fewer rides Kevin Stott has had as possible on a horse, including 0. So he's getting on and he's having an impact straight away. That could be because of his skill, or it's a behavioural booking aspect from the trainer. You know, the horse is ready, it's ready to do its best. I've got my main man on board, or woman. And then also because of if he's ridden them once, he'll already know the horse. He may have made a mistake on them, but he might know what makes them tick. He may have had an influence after that race if they didn't win, about the conditions they race in. So they're all the kind of things you need to kind of think about, especially with jockeys. And if I remove Kevin Ryan, so I can remove the trainer, and you can see his overall stats for when he is jumping on a horse, or he's had 0 to 2 rides on the horse previously. And you can see with 18 to 1 then again, you can kind of then dig within those different stats and various different elements, 16 to 1 or shorter. There was I'll touch on that. The age restrictions is another good thing you can use to kind of dig into. I'm ticking around 42 minutes, but sod it. He doesn't do very well in 4-year-old plus. Now that won't be a jockey thing, I don't think. That will be possibly trainer and the type of horse and who he rides for. But of course, 4-year-old plus, well, obviously for horses aged 4-year-old and older, and we're talking handicaps, I would suspect they're generally might be more likely to be in the grip of the handicap, and more likely to not be open to progress, arguably. And these 3-year-old and 3-year-old only and 3-year-old plus, and indeed nurseries, as you can see there, they are possibly more lightly raced, unexposed. There's also, with 3-year-old plus handicaps, the trainer skill in the weight for age scale, and how they train 3-year-olds, or how they place older horses within 3-year-old plus handicaps. All those different factors come into play in my mind. Some kind of logical reason for why trainers would do better, and jockeys in certain race types and others. And for him, it could be he's better on younger, more precocious horses, and the nature of the races means there could be more unexposed. Obviously, you can then dig by age and various different bits and pieces, but I think there's logic there for looking at those. And again, you can then dig by all these different factors: track, distance, class. If you want to play around, you can just dig through whatever any factors you wanted to. But like I said, always thinking about the logic for why you're diving into something, and why something may be happening, what those stats may be indicating, and not just kind of picking profitable bits and pieces that and then kind of putting together as the ingredients of some kind of recipe, and hoping that it'll kind of work out longer term, because I know from experience, and when I first started building systems and researching like that, that's what I did, and most of them started to lose a lot of money in live play, and that's because they were unintentionally backfitted and they didn't have much logic. And those two things are obviously important, but you can occasionally make mistakes in how you think about things or what you add in. But yeah, they're probably the crucial things with that kind of thing. Yeah, like I said, you can, if your horse race base uses whatever, you can break down by start a set of data by any other set of data and making sure they have logic. You can check the stats over the course of a year. You know, with these 2016, 17, very good. 18, 19 dipped off a little bit. Again, that could be linked to trainer, but then the place strike rates are similar, so that gave me confidence. 2020, you can see the stats there. So obviously there are also many reasons why you could have a bad year, especially for a jockey. That will be linked to who they ride for, possibly, or any number of things can obviously happen in a jockey's personal life, or change of agent, etc., etc. Loss of a claim, blah, 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 blah. So you can check the stats. You can also check the horse. So you can check any angle by the horses, and, you know, to make sure, you know, we've only got one triple winner here. Now, there's some angles, if you're looking at trainers and jockeys, especially tracks, whatever, you might be like, oh, they're 8 from 20, whatever, over the last 3 or 4 years. Well, 6 of those winners, or 5, could be the same horse, and the other 3 the same horse. So that doesn't necessarily mean they won't target a track, as an example. I know I'm going off on a tangent again. It's just something to be conscious of and to be wary of. But I'm ticking round to 46 minutes. Apologies if that's a bit too long, but hopefully you have found that of some mild interest. We shall see how many people watch. I'll be intrigued. Maybe 20, maybe 30, who knows. But it's 9 o'clock. Time for me to pour myself a cup of tea, I think, or maybe a cold glass of water, and watch Line of Duty, which is being replayed on the BBC. There's not much else to watch at the moment, so may as well watch it again. Great show, check it out. But yes, hopefully you found that interesting. But if not, you won't be watching anymore, will you? If you've got this far. Yeah, thanks for watching. Until the next time, this is Josh saying take care and bye for now.